What is happening, everybody? So, what are my thoughts on the Shelby GT 350? Well, before I get into this video too far, I have to admit a certain bias towards that car. I am in love with the Shelby GT 350, but not necessarily from an outright performance standpoint. Now, let me explain. The Shelby GT 350, first and foremost, has the absolute best interior, the best interior materials, and the best interior ergonomics of any of the pony cars. And because of that, you get an overall sense of a higher value of the car, regardless of the price that you're paying for it. And when you feel like you're sitting in something more expensive, and when the fit and finish of that car lend themselves to a richer feel, the price difference argument starts to melt away. The second thing that I love about the GT350 is just the sheer wail of that 5.2 liter. You're talking about a V8 that's spit into over 8,000 RPM and has an exhaust note that is, you can't compare it to anything that you've ever heard if you've never heard one in person. Now, sure, there's plenty of clips on the internet that will, let you hear what it sounds like, but there is a vast difference between what you'll hear over your speakers and what you will actually experience in real life. That means a ton, and it adds to the overall driving experience of that car. So what is the driving experience of the GT350? Well, I can tell you this, it's not like driving a SRT 392 Scat Pack or whatever and a Camaro. Where these two engines shine is powered down low and strong mid-range. That 5.2 liter knows nothing of those qualities. Where it comes online is where these other two engines are signing off. And at around 5,500 to 6,000 RPM, when that 5.2 liter wakes up, you get thrown into the back seat. The absolute thrust of that engine under wide open throttle, higher in the RPM range, is something that the other engines cannot at all compete with. And that makes it a completely different driving experience than the other two. So you take that driving experience, and you take the richer feel and the refined feel of the interior, and you put those together, and how does that, or how would you classify that car? And for me, it's kind of difficult, really. For me, the GT350 is more of a grand touring car as opposed to Gran Turismo. It's more of a car that has a graduated up feel from what the other cars have to offer. Now, I love my SRT, and I wouldn't trade my SRT for a GT350, mainly because I like the driving experience of having more or less a 400 cubic inch big engine sitting in front of me. And I'm at a point in my life where that is more fun to me than the top end rush out of that 5.2 liter. And because of that, I can make the argument that that 5.2 is a lot more fun to drive in certain circumstances, like if you're standing on the throttle. But other than that, it just feels a little weak, so to speak, at least when you compare that to either the 6.2 or the 6.4. But that doesn't take away from that car. That car is an amazing grand touring platform, and when you look at that car from that standpoint, it sets itself far and away ahead of its competition. It just has the feel, the driving experience of something that is considerably more expensive than the $55,000 or $60,000 that that car currently costs. So that's the adult in me talking. Now, what would the kid in me say? Okay, well, first of all, when you look at the reviews and you compare real-world driving experiences between, say, the Camaro and that Mustang GT, the Mustang GT or the GT350 in this case, yeah, it's going to leave you wanting if you're looking for something that's just got a lot of punch down low. And when you look at the price and you look at the performance that you get for that particular car, yeah, it's not going to stack up. In fact, the pendulum is going to swing heavily towards its competition. But the adult in me sees that and says, well, that's not really a valid comparison. You're taking a car that is a much more highly engineered piece of engineering, piece of material, and you're trying to compare it to something that is still relying on old school technology and large displacement to get the job done. And if all you're looking for is an immediate torque hit and nothing else, then you're missing the point of having an engine that will propel you in a way that the other engines can't. And if you can't appreciate what 8,000 RPM means and how that feels and how that sounds, then you're completely missing the point. But the kid in me says, the fuck you talking about? We're talking about an engine that takes forever to come online, and when it does, it only does one thing really well, which is wail on the top end. A 6.2 or a 6.4 right off the line is fun to drive. You can light the tires up at will, and those engines, even though they're larger, still can knock down fairly respectable gas mileage numbers. The Camaro especially better than the Challenger, but the idea is still the same. That Camaro also can come with an automatic transmission, which means that not only can you drive it, but I don't know, say your wife can drive it or your girlfriend can drive it. Designated driver style, if you know what I mean. Not to mention the fact that not everybody takes their cars to road courses. Most guys, if you're talking about, buying an automatic versus a manual transmission, those guys might like to go to the drag strip, a place where the Camaro is going to shine and where the Challenger's already proven to be a very formidable opponent, no matter what you might say about its weight. Cubic inches can take care of that. Well, the adult in me will counter that argument and say, well, yes, but you have to understand that the GT350 is by its own design a better car because it is better engineered. It is a look to the past in a way that the other cars cannot be, in that it is a true throwback to old school Trans Am racing. And to understand the GT's place in history, talking about the GT350, you have to understand that no other car, even the Camaro or the new up-and-coming TA, can really give the same type of a visceral feel that a small inch displacement engine can, high winding, making over 500 horsepower. And although you may say that it makes less torque down low, watch its taillights drift off into the distance if you hit the two from a roll. Okay, all of that basically is this. I have conflicted feelings towards that GT350. Although I love that car and I love what it stands for and I love the history behind it and the name behind it and the fact that it is by far the best American Grand Touring coupe made, in a bubble that all makes sense, and in a bubble that price point actually seems to work well at around 60 grand. But you have to understand that that car is going to be compared to its contemporaries, and it either matches or falls just slightly shy of its contemporaries in certain circumstances. If you're buying a GT350 or you're thinking about a GT350, or if you just want to have a better appreciation for that particular car, you have to look at it separate from the pony car wars. You have to almost look at it as Mustang GT versus Camaro, insert whatever Camaro you want, and ZL1 versus what may soon be the GT500, again, if they ever release it. But the GT350 falls into a really weird spot where it is a much more refined version of what a pony car can be. The ergonomics are spot on perfect. The interior quality is far and away better than what its competition has to offer. And you have to look at it as a grand touring platform, something that a gentleman can get in and at the flick of a switch have a loud exhaust that you can go out and play around, but still come home and feel as though it feels like you've maybe made it, so to speak, almost like a status symbol. Whereas a Camaro or a Challenger, they're more like you bought it because it's fun, not because you're trying to make a statement. And although you're making a hell of a statement with that GT350, and I encourage you, if you haven't seen one, go to your local, tracks or drag strips or car meets and just try to hear one when it lights off and hear the guy when he rolls out of that parking lot and lays into the throttle. It's going to be something that you will never hear the same from any other vehicle. But aside from making a statement and aside from being a marvelous work of engineering, I just don't know if I would ever like that car enough. With as perfect as the interior is and as much as I love that top end Rush, I don't know that I would ever want one in my garage. But post up what you guys think. What are your opinions of that GT350? Is it more of a gentleman's pony car, or is it an engineering experiment that didn't quite live up to the expectations that some of the competition may be meeting at this point? Adios, that's a wrap.